Welcome to the third and final community meeting for Paula Titus Park. My name is Nate Frazee. I'm the project manager from Boston Parks and Recreation, overseeing this project. Next. So just a few housekeeping items tonight. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and will be available on the project website. So please share with any neighbors who may have been interested but unable to attend. During the presentation portion, we ask that you keep your video and mic off. However, during the discussion period, in an effort to make this similar to an actual in-person meeting, and if you're comfortable, we ask that you do turn your cameras on. Next. With that being said, we want to ensure that the conversation is a pleasant experience for all and that the community members are comfortable sharing their comments, questions, and feedback. So please be respectful and mindful of each other's time, as well as we only have an hour and a half together tonight. Let's keep the questions and comments project specific and on point, and please wait until all attendees have had an opportunity to ask a question or provide a comment before you start asking second questions. I'm going to provide my contact, which is at the bottom of the screen. So if there is a desire for additional conversation or issues, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Next. I think we're all Zoom pros by now, but just to go over a couple Zoom tips here. As I mentioned, we will be asking participants if they're comfortable to turn their cameras on during the discussion portion. You simply do that by clicking the little camera icon. And if you use the hand raise, or if you raise, visually on your camera and we can see it, we'll be calling on you through the Q&A portion by hands being raised and visual. And then Christine will be unmuting you so you can ask your question. Additionally, we do have chat. So you can also feel free to post questions, comments in the chat. We'll do our best to try and answer those during the presentation as much as possible. But if we don't, bear with us and we'll try and get those during the Q&A portion later on. Okay. So for tonight's agenda, we're going to be looking at the introduction of the project team, an overview of the project, of where it has been and where it's going, the presentation of plans, and listening and discussion, and then we'll be having a closing remarks and next steps. So next. Oh, one too quick. There we go.
Yep.
No worries. So again, my name is Nathan Frazee. I'm the project manager from Boston Parks and Recreation Department. My contact information, both phone and email, are on there. From my office, Christine Brandeo is joining us. She's the outreach coordinator and external affairs. We also have her contact there. She's great for any community group or neighborhood group activities, specifically with parks. From our design team, from Clara Batchelor Associates, is Kayla Bachman and Jocelyn Wolf. And then just as a contact, in case there are conversations or issues that aren't specific to the park, but neighborhood, I have Jashawn Gant, who is the Office of Neighborhood Services representative. So there are his contact there as well. Next. So just looking at the project schedule and funding, again, we're in our third meeting. We're funded right now through a $35,000 Community Preservation Act funding. What we have right now is that the design team, if we come to consensus on a preferred plan tonight, they're going to work to develop that and kind of get that bid ready so that when we do get construction money, we're able to kind of hit the ground running. In terms of construction funding, we have put in a request in this coming capital fund. So the Boston Parks Department has recommended that. Kim Janey's administration is pushing that through. So that then will go in front of City Council as a vote on the mayor's budget. And if that is approved, then we actually will be able to move right into construction. So fingers crossed that funding goes through, but it could always be funded in delayed 1 year. So just keep that in mind, but we're gonna all keep our fingers crossed. Next. So just going over kind of what our department's park design policy and process is. We primarily balance these various elements, which include community input, such as tonight, safety and regulatory guidelines, City of Boston priorities, as well as parks and recreation goals. Next. So the City of Boston priorities during this project planning is prioritize and expand park access, address equity and climate resiliency, promoting public health, and building strong communities. Okay, next. The parks and recreation goals are in some ways very similar. It's accessibility to all, diverse and balanced in striving for mixed use, having inclusive community engagement, having adaptive and resilient landscapes, and then to promote connections. Next. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kayla. She's going to go over some of the previous meetings and then transition into our preferred plan tonight. I want you all to keep in mind that the preferred plan certainly can still have changes. So that's what we're here to get your feedback and make sure what we've been hearing and what we've been doing is in tune with what you guys have been envisioning as well. With that, I turn it over to Kayla.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kayla Bachman. I'm with CBA Landscape Architects. Glad you're all here tonight to go over these plans. Again, I'm going to start off with a little bit of a recap of the previous 2 meetings that we have for those of you that haven't been able to make it. I'm going to run through the information a little quickly so that we can focus on sort of that preferred design that Nate was talking about tonight. But to start off, we have a little bit of context in the neighborhood. So this part of Roxbury has a lot of diversity in green spaces. You know, there's these little symbols show where there are playgrounds, where you have different sport courts or fields, there is a dog park, and then these passive parks that are generally, walking paths or places to sit. And there's a lot of community gardens in the area as well. So it was really, we ran out of symbols to show the community gardens, but we have the those orange dots to show where those are nearby. Our first meeting showed an analysis of the site. So here's the park, here's Fort Avenue running along the side of the park here. And you've got 2 private condominiums on either side of the park, and this open space at the back of the park that's owned by Beach Glen. It's directly across from the Margaret Wright Community Garden. And then there are several residents across the street kind of on either side. And then this is a big giant hill, as I'm sure most of you know. Some of these, to recap quickly, the analysis, we did a little bit of analysis on what the sun patterns are like, shade and sun through the different seasons. We have an analysis of the fencing, so where the entrance is now, how tall is the fence, a slope analysis that shows, you generally have water running off towards the street and then kind of off this little hill at the top here, so running off towards either side. And then as far as significant vegetation that's on the site, it's mostly grass. There's been a lot of stuff that's been cleared along this corner and kind of weedy trees and shrubs. But there are 4 apple trees that are existing here. There's this pretty large elm tree in the corner by the entrance, and then there's a little weeping cherry tree that's been planted over here. So first meeting, we received a lot of feedback. People really wanted to see flexible open space in the park and a big wow factor. A really important feature was to have some kind of memorial element for Paula Titus, who was a really important part of this community. Several people asked about whether there would be some kind of opportunity for public art in the space. And public art in the city of Boston is controlled by the Boston Arts Commission. Is that right, Nate? got her. I think it's changed a few times, so I'm always
That's correct.
hesitant. So, so they're the ones that kind of regulate, you know, they put out the bids for artists to design something, and it's separate from the Parks and Recreation Department. So that would need to, what we can do is provide a space where that could go, and then, you know, that could be pursued at a later date. We had a strong preference for play equipment at this park for ages 2 to 5. Most play equipment is divided into 2 age groups, just kind of well, 3 age groups, but developmentally, most equipment is either for toddlers ages 2 to 5 or for ages 5 to 12. And it's the factors there are based on all kinds of childhood development milestones and sort of safety regulations as well. And then people ask for kind of a natural theme of play. So avoiding really kind of bright, you know, primary colors or things that would really stick out a lot, and, you know, maybe incorporating natural elements into that space. And the last thing that was requested was comfortable and inclusive seating. So making sure that there were a lot of different kinds of seating opportunities, and to make sure that people who are older, who might have mobility impairments, could use those spaces just as easily as anyone else with, you know, and to add to that, anyone who might be, like, for example, we talk a lot about ADA access as being for someone in a wheelchair, but it's also access that's for someone that's pushing a stroller. So things like that, kind of designing universally for all different types of people. So we went over, in our second meeting, we went over 3 schematic design plans. These are those 3 plans. So we showed options with different kinds of shade pergola, different seating. That open lawn concept changed a little bit in each of these. And we showed a few potential options for how you would enter the park as well as larger and smaller play spaces. So what we heard from that meeting, oops, there we go, was that, again, people preferred the more natural color schemes. As far as safety is concerned, we did ask a question about fencing at the park, because, you know, there's sort of a lot of options. Would we fence just the play area? Would we fence the whole park? And there was a preference for having most of the park fenced in, so that, you know, if the kids playing in the small area, they run off, they're not going into this busy street where the cars tend to go pretty fast down the hill. People also preferred that the play space and lawn were set back from Ford Avenue for those same reasons with the traffic. And people preferred a larger play space and lawn as well. And then the last thing that we heard from neighbors on both sides of the park were that people really like to see these trees planted along the edge to kind of provide some screening, so you're not looking into people's living rooms across the way. So considering all of that, let's see, a little pause for a chat.
I was just letting Karen know that we did have those other playgrounds on our context map.
Yes, so we, yes, yeah, we do have the surrounding playgrounds as well shown there. All right, now the grade reveal, and here we go. All right, so I'll sort of walk everybody through the design, starting with the entrances. So coming in from Ford Ave, you have 2 entrances to the park. This one at the top of the hill is pretty much in the same spot as the entrance that's there right now. Although in order to protect this tree a little bit more, what we've done is come in at an angle. And we did have a lot of requests for there to be a second entrance to the park from the bottom of the hill. So a note about the accessibility at the sidewalk at both of these. On this side, it's not really accessible because you have stairs there. So we're following best practices for the safety of stairs, but that wouldn't be an accessible entrance just because this slope is really steep and you can't get enough space in there unless you do a ramp, which is complicated. And we had comments at the last meeting that people preferred to have, the one accessible entrance, but then maybe use that money that might be spent on the ramp towards other features within the park that would have more added value. So for both of these, this sidewalk does not meet ADA accessibility standards. So what we will do, it will not meet, the entrance won't meet the letter of the law just because you can't enter an accessible space from an inaccessible sidewalk. Like there's not really any, we can't change the sidewalk as part of this project. And just because the hill is steep, it's not going to work. So what we'll do is everything within the park will meet those standards, but you're kind of coming in at like a warped paving entrance anyway, just to kind of go over that. So we would have some kind of entrance feature at the top here, whether it's an arch or some posts, which or ornamental posts we'll show some images of in a little bit. But you'd walk in here, we have a raised planter to protect these existing trees and kind of complement them with a little bit of new planting. And you come into this open plaza space in the center of the park. So here we have a shade pergola, we have tables for seating. There's space for, in the future, if that public art or sculpture piece gets pursued, there is a place for that to go. The circle is diagrammatic, so it could be any shape, but there's sufficient space here to allow free circulation through space, even with something that would be placed there in the future. And like I said before, a lot of people, or a few people commented in the last meeting that they preferred the lawn to be sort of towards the back of the site, just because if you're kids are playing there, you don't have that risk of them going out into the street as much. And people said the park was that area can be pretty noisy with traffic. So having the lawn set back a little bit helps sort of reduce and not really disguise that noise, but make it so you're not right on the street. We are showing a larger play area, and we've responded to that request to have plantings along both edges of the park. So we have some shade trees throughout this lawn space, and then kind of a border of trees coming along this side as well. The play space is kind of set into a hill, so we're proposing like a slide that's set into the hill. So at the top of the hill you come in, and then you slide down, you're sort of at the bottom of a little hill. And then there are a few features that you would climb up to get to that top tier space. And I'll show images of the proposed play features, because the plan view is not really as easy to understand, because it's very diagrammatic. We're also showing like a little playhouse for younger children, and then adding in, I already talked about the trees. And we have some benches as well throughout the site for people to sit and rest, and these are all backless benches, so they would you could sit on them facing the lawn in these cases, or facing the play equipment or the plaza over here. And lastly, we have a little space up here that has game tables that could be used for people playing chess or checkers, and as well as a memorial plaque that explains who Paula Titus was, and why the park is dedicated to her. And sorry, lost my train of thought. But yes, the memorial plaque would be here, and that could be a bronze plaque or something on a granite marker. And the last, let's see, the fencing. So in response to the feedback we received at the last meeting, we have a diagram that shows what the fencing looks like. So the red is the fence all the way around the park, or the red shows where the fence is in the park. And what we've tried to do is kind of minimize the effect of the whole parcel just being closed in and blocked off from the neighbors, and rather trying to soften that a little bit, as well as create an enclosed space that if there are young children, these gates can stay closed unless somebody's using them. And, you know, if you have someone run off, you're able to catch them before they get out into the street. And as sort of a second feature, this gate that goes to the neighboring private yard would be either have a combination lock or a padlock that could be used only by the residents of this building here. And that was, it's not really BPRD policy to have gates to private property, but since this is here and it's well used, that's something that was requested by the residents of that building in the last meeting. And a couple of things I missed in this corner. We would add some flowering. This would be sort of a hillside with a kind of a planted meadow grass underneath, with flowering trees. And then as you come up the steps, we thought it would be really nice to show kind of a monumental sign here that has the name of the park and that you see both from the street and then as you're walking up into the park. Let's see, do the chat check. Okay. Will the lawn as currently shown have a fenced in area for dogs? There is not going to be a dog park at this park. Nate, do you want to elaborate on that a little bit more? Oh wait, you already answered the question.
I did,
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
No worries, but just to put it out there, audible as well. You know, the fence itself will have you know, perimeter fencing gates, but just like all parks in the city that are not designated specifically as dog parks, that dogs would have to be on leash.
There's also a question about an option to negotiate off-leash hours since there's a playground at Marcella Park.
Yeah, I don't know if that's something we're currently doing citywide as an option, but I can certainly run that up the ladder and discuss it. But the one difference with this playground versus Marcella and Lambert is, you know, those are much larger playgrounds. This is, you know, a small playground built into a more passive park. So it's kind of for the smaller kids that, you know, parents want to just bring them to a little playground and not feel overwhelmed in a larger playground.
So if I may, Nate, this park from the beginning was never intended as a dog park, although it is morphed into that as it has not been used or built out yet. But it was always intended to be a passive park for neighborhood use by residents and children in the neighborhood, not for dogs.
And in fact, that's what the Preservation Act money is designated for, the development of a passive park.
And one more thing that I forgot to mention here is that we also have outdoor musical instruments in this along the path here. So I have some audio that I'm going to try to play for you in a little bit when we get to that slide. All right, so we are starting with the play features. So the features we're proposing are based on some feedback we received last time. People really like the idea of having a slide, having sort of these blocks and climbers that are set into the hillside, and some interactive panels for children to play with as well that are in sort of the perimeter against the fence in that play area. So I have the sounds of the instruments here. It's a little, I don't know, is that audible? Okay, well, these are the drum sounds, and then the chimes have a different sound that I'll play in a minute. I know the acoustics are a little Mickey Mouse, but
Yeah.
doing the
Well,
best I can.
and the important thing to note on that is, these aren't going to be, reverberating through your homes and everything. It's very kind of a low distance travel of noise. It's a little bit soother tone, and that's kind of what we're going with here.
Yeah. And these are the chimes, which are a little more subtle. There we go. So both of these instruments are played by hand only. I'll let it play for a couple seconds.
And we can send the links in the chat, so you can open them on your own
Yes.
device, and that should be able to give you a much better audible example of what they sound like.
Yeah, Jocelyn, could you put those in the chat? I see you are doing it. Yes, there are a lot of great instruments that are available out there. We chose these because anything with mallet tends to kind of walk away no matter where they are. So we tried to include something that would be subtle, and this is also a great feature for children that or people really in general that might have different sensory abilities or issues, as well as disabilities. Charlie, I heard you clear your throat. Did you want to chime in with something there? No.
No, I'm good.
Okay. And then the little playhouse that I mentioned, there are a lot of different configurations on that, but just a small play feature that either has, a little store. This one has instruments included. It's more of a make-believe kind of structure rather than something you would climb or run in. Okay. Some ideas for that arch or entrance feature that we showed at the sort of the top entrance of the park. And then that monumental sign, this would be in, on either side of, as you come in through those steps from the lower end of the park. It wouldn't be stacked like this. It would probably be something that's just one level, but we'd have something similar with letters engraved that way. And then there's an option to maybe do some fun cutouts or decorations in the fencing as well. Some options for paving. This is going to be familiar to those of you that attended the last meeting, but we haven't really been super prescriptive with this. We are showing a paver area in that plaza, but otherwise most of the paving would be concrete. And we could look at doing more decorative concrete. Some people said they didn't like the look of plain concrete, so we could do something that has a pattern or different color additives that would change it as well. And then as far as furniture goes, we have a few options of, we're showing a bench and a backless bench sort of just to see some chats. All right, so these are two bench options, kind of a more contemporary style. And as far as the tables and chairs go, we can go with sort of more traditional anchored furniture, or these are partially movable tables and chairs. So the tables are anchored, but the chairs kind of have, it's almost like a pivot, so you can move them a little bit in place. And these are at a park in Alston. This is Smith Playground, right? Neat.
I believe so. Yep.
And we have, and they can be made with that game board as well. We're showing a square table in the plan, but this is an option we wanted to show here. And sort of a third, it's kind of a triple whammy as far as photos go. We have the middle, the game tables, the movable furniture, and then introducing some little pop of color into the park. We did have people say specifically that they didn't want a lot of bright colors, but we wanted to introduce the idea of maybe doing, some kind of more naturey color, yellow, green, orange kind of colors as part of the site furnishings as an option for your consideration. And okay, and then we're showing two styles of pergola. This is not really a detail that we've developed very much so far. We just sort of have an outline shape, but there are more traditional style, more contemporary style. We just wanted to bounce that off of this group to see if there was any preference either way. And we can come back to any of these slides with the images. When you ask your question, feel free to be like, can you go back to the slide with the play equipment? That's totally fine. And oh, sorry. Okay, this is the part where I hand it back to Nate. I'm a little over enthusiastic with the slides today. So.
All good. So I just, again, want to go over some of the Zoom tips. Now that we're getting to the discussion, you know, if you are comfortable turning your cameras on so we can see everybody's lovely faces. Again, you click the little hand icon to raise your hand so that we can call on you to answer questions. When you do that, we will unmute you so you can ask that question. Additionally, if you have your camera on and you just are raising your hand, we're going to do our best to keep an eye on that and call on questions that way as well. All right.
And we have the plan here for reference.
I see a few cameras turned on. Great. So now we're just curious about what your feedback is and just to make sure that we're on the right page and really putting and summarizing all of the comments we've gotten up to this point in a preferred plan that is what you guys are looking for. I see Debbie has her.
You can unmute yourself.
There we go.
I think I'm unmuted.
You are perfect.
I haven't taken the time to email all of you, but I just wanted to say thank you for the wonderful work you've done. Your designs have been very thoughtful and certainly meeting the requests and of everyone that's been involved. Your communication has been excellent. Your presentation, everything it's been such a positive experience. And I just wanted to say thank you for all that everybody involved has done. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Debbie. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
I see we have hand raised. Karen.
Karen can unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Karen. I just curious about, excuse me, all the trees. I'm sure this is drawn to scale. I'm no landscape architect, but it just seems like a lot of trees. Although I do love that in one of the slides, the trees at least toward the Fort Hill condominiums, it looks like maybe, I don't know, it just seems like a lot of trees. That's my reaction. And thank you for the explanation about the children's playground. I personally think the Sam Sad playground and the Doris Tillman playground are phenomenal. I understand what you're saying here, that they are, the one you're proposing is for smaller toddlers. Yeah, and you've almost convinced me that we need it. I don't know that we do, but I have not been involved in the previous meeting, so, you know, late to the game. But the trees, I just think there seem to be a lot of trees.
Yeah, so the trees are, so the trees along the edge are a response to what we heard at the last meeting specifically. People really missed, there had been a lot of planting here that was, a lot of it was kind of weedy, I think. Right?
No, it was beautiful before the development came. It was, you're right. You are right, Kayla.
And so we were asked to sort of replace that. These are, so yes, these are shown at the size that they would be in maybe 5 years after going in. And the trees here are flowering trees. They're shown at about 10 feet wide, I think, which is 10 to 15 feet is a pretty standard canopy for a smaller flowering tree. Where we're showing the trees that are really planted together like this, these would probably be columnar trees. So those usually are ranging within kind of a 10 to 20 foot wide canopy. And as they grow, they'll kind of grow together. So the canopies would be up high. So you'd be able to see kind of below underneath the trunks, but then you have a little bit of screening more towards the top. This is also one of the reasons for doing this too, was because this play area gets a lot of southern and western exposure. So just to give a little more shade, so it doesn't get too hot in that.
True.
And as far as the trees over here, so these are the existing apple trees. They're kind of not really shown at the size that they are, but you know, kind of diagrammatic. Over here, we have the trees a little spread out a little bit more, and trying to keep, you know, those would eventually grow to have a big shade canopy, but yeah.
And one thing, just to go back to the trees along the lower edge, that was also a request from the condominium there. Just because there is an embankment, it kind of creates this almost kind of amphitheater just looking at their house. It just screens a little bit, so when kids are playing there and everything, it's not all focused right at, you know, really kind of the second and third floor of their homes.
The irony, because all the trees were taken down for those condos.
And lastly, that will help control erosion along that slope as well. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Kelly, could you tell us what kind of trees they are and what would be the maximum height of the canopy?
We have not picked specific species out yet, so unfortunately I cannot tell you that. We can certainly pick, if there's a kind of a final height that folks have in mind, I think that would be helpful to know, so that we can pick species that meet those requirements. So let's say, I imagine some people might have a view, especially the houses across the street, that they might want to preserve. If there's sort of a 40-foot threshold or something like that, we can choose trees that would stay a little smaller. Or is there any preference on kind of tree height from folks that live nearby or in general?
I would say that if we could find trees that max out at no more than 12 feet.
Is that, Charlie, is that for the flowering trees? Is that what you're talking about?
The trees that create the buffer. Along the, yeah, right there. Yeah, that group there. I think the other thing I would suggest, Kayla, is if we can have trees that don't shade too much in the fall, so we control the leaves on the ground.
Yeah, we can choose something that has smaller leaves, or leaves that kind of disintegrate more quickly than, say, oak trees, for example, which would, the leaves last a long time and they don't drop until a lot later, so they don't always get cleaned up before the winter. As far as the height is concerned, I mean, 12 feet gets us about, for mature height of 12 feet, that's only really, that's almost in like a large shrub height category. So you can have trees that are that small, but your options are pretty limited. They would pretty much be like quite small flowering trees. If you push it to 15-ish, you get a little more range. But is there a specific reasoning behind the 12 feet, or is it that you want to be able to see into the park a little bit more, or?
I think that the trees that were there weren't much taller than 12.
Hold on, Charlie, you got a little quiet there. It's hard to hear.
Yeah, I think that the
There you go,
trees that were
perfect.
there previously were not much taller than 12, 15 feet.
Okay.
They weren't real big trees.
The one factor here is where we were looking for these to provide some shade into the playground. We would want them to be a little bit larger. It could be that we do kind of a combination where maybe right now where we're showing 4 of those, maybe we stagger that and change that with, you know, 1 or 2 are a little bit taller and two are a little bit shorter. That way it kind of gives you a staggered height. You get some shade, but you don't get a complete wall of trees.
I'd rather have them uniformed in terms
Okay,
of height.
all right,
I don't know how everybody else feels, but I don't particularly think the staggered heights would be very appealing.
sure. Okay, we'll look into tree heights and how we can kind of work on an edge there. I see one question about watering is considered when planting. So when we do install trees, the contractor's responsible for watering. They also are responsible for those trees to survive for 2 years. That's generally gets them into that establishment period where, the natural rain and everything will keep them going.
And we typically will choose, especially when we know that there's not going to be irrigation, we'll choose very resilient species that will hold up to periods of drought and kind of having care.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to make one more comment on the trees. And this may be because the way they appear on the drawing, but I would agree with Karen. On the drawing, it looks like the trees are overpowering the park.
Mhm.
And that's not what we want, I don't think.
Charlie, I agree with you, like especially in the middle, although they'd make great trees for hammocks, but it just seems like the ones that slice through the park maybe aren't as necessary, but again, I'm no landscape architect.
Yeah, we could certainly look at, maybe we pull away the trees that are sort of along this pathway. So take these two, leave the ones near the edge, and then kind of have these near the play area. So if these two are gone, and then you have sort of a little more flow, open
Yeah.
in the middle.
Mhm.
We can definitely look in.
And I think it would give a little bit more lawn space too.
Mhm.
Right.
Okay.
I see.
Thanks, y'all.
No. I
Sorry,
appreciate
Nathan,
that.
were you about to say something?
Sorry, were you going to ask a
Her
question?
hand was up, Nate.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I love this conversation, and thank you for the presentation thus far. I think that while I understand, I think especially knowing the space, right? Like the idea of this many trees being incorporated into such a small space seems overwhelming, but I do understand also that the space gets incredibly hot. Like there's no shade cover right now. So there really does need to be an investment in mature shade cover so that it's a sustainable space. So I appreciate you for taking that into consideration. I also think that there's a piece in that flowering tree versus regular tree piece where you can't see the levels of the delineation. My question is around, as we think about this being from a preservation budget, and as we think about, the amazing apple trees and the cherry tree that folks have already planted in this space, is there any part of the Preservation Act budget that requires that we ensure any planting in this space is with native plants to Boston or to Roxbury specifically? Thinking about myself as a gardener trying to take down so many invasive species that have taken over our green spaces in Roxbury. How are we looking at specifically Northeastern native plants to bring that that nature and that shade to this park?
It's a great question and comment. So there is nothing within that that actually stipulates any of that, but that doesn't mean those aren't items we can actually incorporate and address. So, and Kayla can speak a little bit more to this. We have, especially at kind of the stair entrance, we have the opportunity for, some low mow, no mow type planting, evergreen, wildflower type mixes in there. So we can certainly look at that and try and incorporate as many native, also, insect and disease resistant trees as well. Kayla, do you want to?
Exactly. As soon as we talk about, drought resistance and all of these pieces, right? Native plants will be more likely to be able to survive, even if it's a less than desirable, like, in terms of its sun and shade patterns already.
Yeah, and to add to what Nate said, that meadow, typically what we use for meadow mixes is a great company called, oh shoot, now I blanked on the name. It's called Native Wetland Plants. It shouldn't be a hard name to forget, but they're
New England wetland plants?
Yes, New England Wetland Plants. Thank you, Jeff. They are, yeah, they have really thoughtful seed mixes to work for different kinds of environments, and so we use them a lot. And yeah, as far as the trees go, again, to echo what Nate said, we would definitely prioritize using native trees, and we often refer to adaptive trees, for trees that will do well in our climate. But I think sometimes it can be really nice to include sort of a specimen that's not necessarily native, but not invasive either, just because it adds a quality to the space that we can't always get with only using native trees. But wherever possible, I think we have a lot of wonderful species in the Northeast that we try to use as much as possible, as much as we can.
I see, I think Karen's hand's up, but she also typed in a question. So why don't we, you can, yeah, I was gonna say.
So now I have two questions.
I think we'll allow it, depending on
right.
how the first one goes.
Okay,
let's
so
start with
one
that.
is, I know in Alva Kittredge Square, the beautiful park renovation there, they did put in game tables. So my first question is, do we know if they're used? I mean, I like the idea. I think they're super cute. Do people really go there with their checkers or their chess, and maybe it doesn't matter as long as there's a flat surface. My second question is, in the last decade, Highland Park was renovated with about, I'm going to say it was like $500,000, and a whole bunch of plantings were put in. And unfortunately, every summer, for example, there's decorative grass that, in my opinion, was planted too close to each other. So now it's almost like a shrub of grass. And every summer it gets high topped. The crew comes and just cuts it across. And so I'm just curious what the follow-up is with plantings of this nature. Like, it does bum me out that in Highland Park, the plants were put in the ground, and then it just seems like the people who had the vision didn't stay connected to the park.
Sure, and obviously that comes down to kind of a maintenance problem, and as a city and a department as a whole, we are limited with our maintenance capabilities. So
Yeah.
typically, what we're kind of limited down to is trees and shrubs and lawn. So when we tend to do more elaborate or more extensive planting, especially perennial beds, we really do rely heavily on community groups to help with that. And because nobody wants to put it in and have it look bad, that's not good for anybody. So, again, if anybody's interested in joining a Paula Titus Friends group, we can certainly work to put together a design and a planting plan that has, is within the capabilities and desires to maintain it, and has kind of a more aesthetic appeal that would be more in line with what you guys would be liking to see.
I'll do it.
Is that the only question? Because there are we.
No, and the first question was about the game tables.
Oh,
like,
well, okay. So
they're fine. They're, I think they're fine as long as they're level and people can still have lunch on them. But I'm just curious, like, do people use the game tables throughout at least our neighborhood in Alva Kittredge?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure at the Kittredge Square location. Some parks, they are incredibly popular. Others, it's kind of a hit or miss. The one thing that we were showing on some of these tables is that we oftentimes prefer tables that are perforated, so they have small holes in it, allows for drainage. That way you don't have water or anything pooling on them. What the manufacturers have started doing is taking those perforations and actually making those into kind of a checkerboard design. So that way you have the function of making sure that that table is porous. You don't get as much graffiti on it. but it also could serve as a game table as well. So that's I think something we'd be looking at here. That way it's serving multiple purposes with that design.
And the game tables were something that was requested in the last meeting, so it wasn't kind of thrown in out of thin air.
And it sounds like Mark wants somebody to challenge him to checkers at the park. So if anybody's up for it, I'm pretty sure my 4-year-old could beat me in checkers. So I'm not going to volunteer myself. But again, so to his point and what he's saying about at Kittredge Square, sometimes it is hit or miss. But what we'd be looking at is something that serves multiple purposes in that design. I'm perusing the videos to see if anybody's throwing their hands up.
Can we go to the pergola, the style of the shaded?
Oh yeah, I think that's the pergola. Here we go. Oh, here we go. Here. Yeah, is there any thoughts on kind of a direction on style? These are both metal, which I think would be the material that we'd be looking at here just to help it last a longer time. But there's thoughts on whether sort of a slatted approach or more of a stacked kind of traditional style approach is preferred by people, then we'd love to hear that.
I would like to hear too. I kind of like the contemporary style, but interested in what other folk think.
So a thumbs up from Karen.
I immediately went the other way. I'm sorry, Charlie. I
Oh,
think
no.
that the more that the traditional more fits our neighborhood aesthetic, right? We're talking about how this place matters and how we are trying to preserve the amazing buildings that have been here for hundreds and hundreds of years. So not to say that the traditional style is something that was there in the 1800s, but I would personally prefer more traditional style shading.
And
There's also, I was going to say, it's also not like a black or white kind of thing too. We can strike a balance in something that's, nods to that traditional architecture, but has more contemporary features as well. These are sort of like extremes. I mean, even the left one is a little bit contemporary just because of the way the members are set up and they kind of have that angling a little bit. But yeah, I think we could find
Anybody
something.
else?
There's a couple comments in the chat. I see Katie's with the vote for traditional. Karen loves the contemporary, and Mark agrees that the traditional fits the neighborhood much better. I think one thing to note on that is that we were looking at not quite a perfect rectangle as well. So I think as soon as you kind of add a little bit of a different angle or anything like that, that can kind of change and it could give a traditional one a little bit more of a contemporary mix, and it could potentially appease and provide both aesthetics in one. It looks like Debbie says traditional might fit in the neighborhood, but Paula was a contemporary person, so can't argue with that, right?
I think both are wonderful. To be honest, I love the idea of a pergola either way. I do think the two properties on either side of the park are more modern, but Katie, I totally get it. Across the street are brick row houses, that, are probably from the late 1800s. So I could go either way, but I lean toward contemporary.
Sure. There you go. I think the one thing to note though is both of these ones are very light colors. I think we'd probably be leaning towards a darker color just to help any debris or deter vandalism or anything like that associated with that. Most of these come in a ton of different colors, so we can get, it doesn't have to be jet black. It could be, nice soft
Like a
gray,
dark green or
greens, anything like that, which will fit along with, the desire to have this be a more naturalistic playground. Thought I had a 4-year-old coming. No, she got distracted.
What about the seating, Nathan and Kayla?
So here's the backed and backless benches, as well as a couple different options of the cafe type style tables and chairs. What do people think about the idea of semi-movable chairs? If you're looking at those kind of reddish chairs right there, what they do is they put like a U-bolt around the bottom so that the chairs can slide in and out a little bit. So when you sit down, like so many people are often accustomed, you scooch in a little bit. So that gives you the ability to feel like it's movable chairs when it only has a little bit of movement. I think that allows, it allows you to engage a little bit more with that and to have it be a little bit more of an intimate residential feel as opposed to a very urban park. So I'm just curious what people's thoughts are about that. And color, like we haven't heard nobody said no to the red chairs yet. So.
Well, I would say I like the bench with the back. If we're going to do, we can do a combination if that's possible, but there should be at least one bench with a back.
Yeah, we would have both in there. Yeah, it wouldn't only be the, I think in the plan, we might have labeled them all as backless, but we would want to include some with backs as well.
In the thought with the backless one is one that I think we had a few that were on the edge of the pathway to the lawn. That way you could sit, look out into lawn, or you could sit, look into the pathway. But yes, we absolutely would be incorporating both. And I see some people are saying in favor of the semi-movable chairs. Jeff and Karen both agreed on that.
I think what's nice about the semi-movable is it allows for people of all shapes and sizes, to be honest. And then as I get older, I just need a back. Charlie, I'm with you. That might not be why you want a back on your bench, but I want a back on the bench because I'm old.
Oh, I'm all about the backs on the bench.
I have a
It's
heating
way more
pad on my
comfortable.
back right now, so I feel you. That's 4-year-old induced though, so.
Nate or Kayla, have you seen those movable chairs in person?
Yes.
How secure are they?
They're very secure. They have not disappeared at all.
Yeah, Nate, how are the U-bolts installed in a little concrete footing? I'm guessing underneath the asphalt here.
Yeah, they are anchored down. So, I still haven't heard anybody against the red color though.
I'm not a big fan of the red color.
Okay,
Or the yellow.
there we go. Wait,
Different
or
color,
yellow.
it could be yellow, a brighter green, kind of a lime, or yeah, this furniture also comes in kind of low-key colors too. The whole rainbow.
We just wanted to see, the idea of maybe a little bit of splash
a
of
little
color,
interest. Yeah.
what some thoughts would be.
I think I would want to know what the people who live closest to the park and would have to look at it the most think.
I see a couple votes already in here. Karen said purple and green, and Jackie, oh, sorry, it's jumping around. And Jeff said color, so it sounds like he's in favor of some sort of color, bright color maybe. And then Jackie said or blue. If you see actually in the distance there is a blue back there. It's kind of a little bit of a baby blue. Is that UMass Boston's colors, Charlie? Does that win you over a little bit? Maybe.
That's not our color blue.
we can adjust it a shade, a UMass Boston blue. I think we could look into that.
University up on the hill. I've had enough of UMass blue for now.
Okay. I grew up at Dartmouth College, so everything was dark green, and I like green, but I don't like dark green. Yeah. I see favors of blue and green. So I think blue is a natural color. So I think exactly what Mark just said. We can find ones that are in that like earthy tone So they're not going to be so flashy that it's gonna be like a stark flash of color, but it will be an earth tone complementary to everything, but still provide a little bit of color in there.
I feel like something a little more tealish, like this play equipment color might be nice. Or this dark one.
Yeah, if
See
you can
what's
see that
available.
in the background there.
Let's see, were there any other thing? Oh, did any particular thoughts or preferences on different types of paving? We've just shown kind of generic pavers in the plaza area for now, but any thoughts from anybody about, you know, some of these different styles or features here, patterns rather?
A brick shape, whether red brick or otherwise.
I
Kind of
love the
pick up
idea
on
of
the
I
neighborhood.
love the idea of bricks as well. However, like just given if we're talking about ADA accessibility, the brick sidewalks in our neighborhood are crumbling in a lot of areas and make it incredibly inaccessible. So however we can, if we are to do something with brick banding, making sure that it is safe and secure and will not deteriorate over time, I think is incredibly important.
One of the things they were showing in this upper right image is how we could get a little bit of splash of that kind of traditional brick look, but still have the vast majority of it being concrete, which is, you know, a fully accessible material. And I see
That was going to be my suggestion. That, you know, I think that Katie made a really good point about the brick, and I'm not so sure. To me, brick is the way brick is installed on walkways today, and after 10 years, you're going to get some breakdown with regular brick. It's just going to happen. The pavers, the wider pavers, are the most accessible, the safest, and the most durable. I just went through this 2 years ago at UMass Boston as we were redoing our plaza, and we spent a lot of time on it. But I would think for durability, the wider pavers are much, cement pavers are much better, will last longer. It is easier to install them so that there's a smooth surface, a consistently smooth surface. And I also think what you're showing here with the dark on the light, yeah, that would also sort of complement the color palette if we go with those bluish tables. So it, you know, it all, and they have a little border of red brick would make a lot of sense.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm in vote of smaller pavers, mostly for scale. If we're going that route, landscape architect, full disclosure, with IBI group. So Kayla, won't be too hard.
I knew it as soon as you said New England wetland plants.
Yep. We got it. But yeah, I think scale, let's keep it smaller. You know, it doesn't have to be brick color, but brick pattern. But yeah, obviously mostly concrete for the accessibility.
And I love the idea of variety also, as opposed to just unilateral, uniform, blah. Like you said, Charlie, I like some of the darker color, like Jeff or whomever said the idea of brick along maybe the edges, but just not the permeable pavers and herringbone pattern that just looks so suburban by itself.
I will say one thing to note is that you know, we can look at all sorts of permeable pavers. There's a comment from Mark about materials that absorb water to address runoff, as well as any potential runoff issues for the homes down slope. We'll be doing a grading plan and infiltration plan to try and really get that water in our site. We're not going to be diverting water towards any of the homes. But a lot of these paver designs have permeable options as well as we could really kind of work with the grading so that we're pitching it towards lawn areas to ensure that water is getting on the grass as well.
Another note around that, just to like triple click on Mark's comment around permeable pavers. I think one of the challenges we see at Kitteridge right now is that for whatever type of paver they used in that space is not withstanding the elements. It is starting to break in the areas entering and exiting the park. I'm not sure if that's from shoveling or from salt or from what, but it is, it was relatively new development. So however we can, obviously, we can't amount for every possibility, but how we can understand issues that our parks in this neighborhood have come across and how we can address them before we put the money into this.
And to add on to what Katie's saying, like it's actually like crumbling. The whatever the concrete material is crumbling, it's like silt now. It's quite remarkable.
Karen, before my time, but my office designed that park, and it's exposed aggregate concrete that was saw cut. So it's starting right where they had to do the saw cuts, which is a necessary part of concrete, but it's from the salt most likely getting into those cracks. So concrete doesn't solve everything. There's good and bad of all materials, but given this is a non-vehicular environment in this park, and then who knows if it will be salted, but anyway.
Yeah, we wouldn't be doing salting and or anything like that within the park. So typically what we do for our parks is we ensure sidewalks and really large pathways are plowed and shoveled, but we don't typically shovel and clear snow in all of our smaller parks. All right, Kayla flipped to kind of the fencing. There we go. Any thoughts on some of the proposed kind of fence detailing or gateway entry points that we're proposing?
I like the archway. I don't know if that's too much for the size of this park. I like it, but scale is, I don't know.
We could certainly look at doing something. I agree. I think this is a little bit grand. I guess a question that I have is which entrance, I know that right now there's really just the one entrance from the street, but is there one entrance that would be used more often that should be kind of designed as the primary entrance? Would it be in that same spot and having that archway there? That's, maybe it's a little bit simpler, less elaborate, or a little bit smaller to fit the scale of the park. Or, we've shown this kind of monumental wall sign in the stairway entrance is, I don't know, are there any thoughts about which entrance would get used more and which one should be kind of more symbolic, I guess, as the entrance?
So, yeah, I would think that the entrance at the top of the hill that's the one that's used most now.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that it would stay the same, plus it will be an easier access than coming up the hill on the other one, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think, upper one would be most used, and lower one, I don't know if with the steps, it's kind of gradual enough where it may not want to be a, big moment or a celebratory moment, but more of a quiet, park up the hill rather than, hey, everybody, look, there's a park over here. To me, it doesn't warrant, that end doesn't warrant the grand or more grand gesture.
I agree. I think,
And this could be, we could look at doing something kind of similar to this, but in the in the stair treads, perhaps, like as you're walking up, you see the treads, just that you see it as opposed to something that's a lot larger and more attention. Would have to study that a little bit to see if you get lost or not. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it's not like an Ameristar, cheap fence, I think it'll look good. And definitely black, ideally steel, but anyways.
So
Not
does
too
that mean
nice of
that the current chain link fence is going to go away?
Yes,
That's what we're proposing, yeah.
yes.
I will be president of Paula Titus Park.
That's all it
With that
took.
promise, the day it comes down, I'll step in, Charlie.
I got Christine working on the Friends Group MOU for you right now.
Okay.
Karen, I expected that. I'm not going to tell everybody about the little wine sessions you and Paula used to have. Up on the
What do you mean? I don't even know what you're talking about.
I feel two ways about this, right? In that, like, yes, we think about the upper entrance as the main entrance because that is our current access, right? However, like, is this a park that we, I'm imagining folks wanting a reprieve and like walking up the hill from perhaps the T and being granted this entrance, walking up the hill and seeing it. However, the new condominiums there have their parking right there, and it's directly, if we're talking about the most dangerous part of that curve, that is the most dangerous part of that curve. So when it comes to like a safe, not to say someone's going to run out because you said you're going to put fencing and gates and such to prevent that, but the safety averse or danger averse person in me thinks like we shouldn't be making the main entrance of this or exit of this be right at the crux of the corner of that hill.
And I do have to backpedal a little bit because I think that the accessible entrance should be the main entrance. I just want to make that very clear.
Right.
But I think I in my head I imagined it more as it as almost a marker or symbol, which would be the better place to have that. Does that make sense?
At the
Yeah.
accessible entrance.
At either, my question about which one should be the main entrance was more of a, like from a visual and symbolic standpoint, which would be the side that you would want to emphasize more, rather than the entrance and access itself.
And I think I can't remember if it was Jeff or Mark that kind of mentioned the stairs area being a little bit softer, more contemplative space, right? So that's where the thought is, could these kind of granite stones serve as a small indication, especially as you come around that corner, you're going to see Paula's name on there and the park's name there. But then when you get up the hill, you have, more of the kind of pedestrian scale archway that indicates your entry into the park. I think that sounds like some of what we've heard is what people are in line with, right?
Yes, and I think that Katie's point is an excellent one, because as you get further down the hill where that entrance, the second entrance, I'll call it the second entrance, is going to be, I'm right across the street from there on the curb. And sometimes that curb can be dangerous. Sometimes when you're coming down the hill, you can't really see the cars coming up until you're almost there. It's been better in the last few years, but there was a time when we had some speeders come around that corner. So I just think that we don't want to make that a highlight of direct foot traffic there if we don't have to.
Excellent points. Kayla, you want to keep kind of running through the slides? I think we only have a few ones we haven't kind of discussed.
Yeah. Oh, the play equipment and gear.
Any thoughts on the music chimes or drums?
I like it. It's different and something that's not really in this neighborhood at any of the playgrounds. And they're pretty, well made where they're not super loud or annoying for the neighborhood.
But I like them too. I mean, I think that it adds a nice little flavor to the park, and certainly gives the kids something to do.
Cynthia, I
as a
see
hand up.
yeah, Cynthia's hand. If you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. I don't have a horse in this race because I'm down the hill much more regarding the musical instruments, but I just wanted to say that I'm living next to Lambert Park where there are no musical instruments, but the kids use sticks to play the gym equipment as musical instruments. And it is loud. I mean, I'm 2 blocks away and we listen to it all afternoon. So I know you guys commented these have a specific between the trees and how they're designed. But for the neighbors, I just wanted to add that what we're listening to over at Lambert is super cute until it's not cute.
And that's from kids whacking sticks on the play
I
equipment.
assume it's sticks. Yeah, it sounds like they're trying to play bells from here. So this may be so much better designed with all the trees and everything like that, but it sounds so pleasant when you play it right now, added with the traffic noise and everything else. I don't know after this experience how I'd feel living up against it.
Sure. I think the one thing I would note about the chimes that we're showing here is they don't have any, you're not banging on them with anything. You do it with your hand. So the way those chimes are done is basically there's an outer metal piece with an inner post. So I'd be curious on that one, Kayla, is even if you were to hit that with a stick, I mean, it's designed for that impact. I wonder if that would help ensure that it's creating more of a subtle intended tone versus, a stick on a metal post.
Yeah, that's a good question for the manufacturer. This one, they really talk about it being kind of part of the appeal of it is supposed to be the resonance in it. So when you hit it with your hand, it's a very tactile experience because it vibrates, and then you're not getting the sound very well from the from me holding my phone up to my microphone on my laptop, but it's kind of a lower tone, and they are what's the tuning called? Chromatic? No.
I'm sure there's great testimonials for the manufacturer on other neighborhood parks, and so this is probably no concern at all. But I just wanted to contribute to the.
No, I think it's a great question to ask them. I would definitely be, what does that sound like if someone hits it with a stick? Because you know that someone's gonna grab sticks and hit those.
Right.
The same thing with the drums. Not stopped, but we've tended away from using instruments in parks where they have like mallets or a little thing attached, because it's always attached to the cable and it's always gone in like a week and a half. Somebody cuts it or it walks off, or no matter what the park, no matter how many people visit it, the mallets always walk away. So that's sort of where we were going with something that could be just hit with your hands.
Good points, and we'll keep looking into that. Any thoughts on the type of play elements we're looking at here?
And just to elaborate a little bit more on these, we don't really have pictures that communicate exactly what we're trying to show with these rubber blocks and climbing features. So go back to the plan. We'll just use this one. For those of you that are not landscape architects like Jeff, these are your contour lines. So they're showing your slope as you go down the hill. So these dark ones, you're sloping down in this direction. And the intention with those play features, so those kind of blocks and then the little climbers, is that they're set into the hillside. So you're coming from a lower elevation here, a higher elevation here. It's not really that much elevation. It's this is 3 contours, so that's 3 feet of grade change. So it's not very high, but you're kind of getting that different levels. And then this feature here would be sort of buried into the hillside and configured so that you're sort of stepping in and up from different directions.
And Kayla, this ground material on the playground, that was the rubber surface?
Yes. Mhm.
So to your point around the slope, right now that space is very much, it falls away, right? The
Mhm.
edges of this area truly do fall away. And I'm sure that y'all have considered this already, but like, is there any additional kind of retaining wall pieces of this that would be integrated, or because that space down in the corner where you have the climbers and such, like, I struggle to see how that would be a useful, like a well-utilized play area because of the slope of that corner of the area. So I'm not the landscape architect as we talked about, like, but that just seems nice
Yeah, so we
in
are
practice on, or in theory.
Were you done, Katie? Because you muted yourself. Okay.
you were cutting in and out a little bit, so sorry that I interrupted you. But yes, we would have like a retaining wall element where there's fencing here, so it would be a little bit lower down below, even though we would still have a slope. Here it would be reduced, and then up at the top of the wall and fence, it would be a little bit higher. So we're probably not looking at and this, yeah, most of the slope would really still be focused down in here.
And for scale, are we thinking, how much estimated space in this drawing are we seeing between the existing outer perimeter and the ornamental gate on the other side of those 4 main trees? Just so that, so I can get a better understanding of, where that delineation would be.
I'm sorry, between here and here? Or over here?
Sorry, bottom left corner between the lowest outer wall and the ornamental fence to the right of the 4 trees.
I see. So that's it's about 10 feet of area there.
Is it possible to move that ornamental fence closer? Just thinking about maintenance of those, trash or, a kid's toy or something that gets into that no man's land between the red and the gray lines, walls.
Sorry, Jeff, meaning moving the fence basically onto the gray?
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't be able to do it on top of it because of the type of wall it is, but on that side of the trees, does that become a bit of a trash collector rather than, potentially enlarging the playground, at least in terms of how it feels, it's wider.
Yeah, some of the intention here was to protect those trees. I do hear what you're saying about, things falling through that. It would be, you could access it coming around here if you were kind of going through this tall grass, if you needed to. But I think this is a pretty steep drop off, and then this retaining wall is, I think, about 30 inches high. So we were just trying to avoid this sort of like big running hill that would be very close to this area for younger kids.
Yep, it's hard to see those existing contours there, but good point.
I see Lauren's comment about trash cans. Yes, we will be incorporating trash cans for sure. We typically keep those around gathering or edges. Just that way, last bit of reminder as you're leaving, put it in the trash can or in a plaza space. And then I saw comment about the trash waste. Karen is going to be your contact for the Friends group to refill any dog waste receptacles that we're looking
Right.
at.
Right. I'm not talking about refilling of.
I know. Yeah,
Thanks
well, that's what I'm
for
saying. Yeah.
offering, Karen. But one of the issues that we run into across the parks in Knoxbury are that there is no dedicated dog waste station in any of our current parks, with the exception of the area owned by the trustees over near Alba Kittredge. So as we think about this being a dog-friendly space, while they need to be on leash, like I do want to preemptively advocate for the installation of a dog waste station, whether or not it is the Friends group that then refills that dog waste station. I think that it will help to keep our parks cleaner by providing a place for dog owners to clean up after those dogs.
Yeah, that's definitely something we can look at incorporating.
I would hope that the dogs, even on leash, would not be defecating in this park, particularly with a playground and that kind of stuff and kids. And
So
dog waste happens everywhere. There's really not much that a dog owner can do to stop a dog in the middle, right? Like, so I understand what you're saying, Charlie, especially with a playground in play, but that even underscores for me the importance of having the ability to take care of that waste easily and safely.
so let me ask a question so we clear this up. I mean, be very clear about the dogs. Nate, when I was on the park commission, a park had to be a certain size, space-wise, for dogs to even be allowed in. Is that still the case? If it is,
I'm not exactly sure on that. Typically when we do not have dogs in playgrounds. So the one thing about this park is that it isn't completely a playground. It is a passive park and a playground. I do agree that, especially that I think we presented in the last meeting is as soon as you put up a full perimeter fence with gates, that becomes highly advantageous for dog owners and I would say non-responsible dog owners that will tend to drop a dog right in the gate and off leash instantly. At that point, obviously, there's no way to control if that dog's going into the playground space or staying on the plaza or lawn space. So that's where, when we were discussing that last time, we were kind of weighing the pros and cons of fencing. Because if you remember, we had shown fencing just around the playground area versus fencing around the entire park. So that's where we were kind of going with that. I'm not exactly sure on the square footage. I hadn't heard that, but that doesn't mean that's not an accurate statement. What I've done on another park that was a little bit bigger than this, but it also had kind of a small playground interspersed in a more passive park, is that we put a sign around the playground area saying no dogs in the playground to play space. But then there's larger lawn space, offset from that where people do bring their dogs. And I think Cynthia's hand is back up.
Yes, thank you. Just to that point, Charlie. So again, I live across from Lambert. I'm a dog owner, and so Lambert's fenced in with dogs permitted on leash with signage, advising you to keep your dogs off the 3 kids spaces. Mm-hmm. And I would say that what I see from the outside is, 90% of the time that works. People do walk their dogs in there, and if they do, they're on leash. There are some sets of people that come in early in the morning that give their dog full rein of the area, but very few are hanging out on the playground itself. They may cross over, but I've never seen dogs roaming while kids are in play at the same time. But there is a lot of dog walking, which I think is the same in Alva Kittredge Park. And I think it's great that Boston has dog permitted on leash in all parks because it makes the park usable by lots of people for leashed dog behavior.
Mhm.
Good point and observation. And again, I think some of that will come down to, you know, how the neighborhood kind of does a self-policing, right? If we start to see negative behaviors, we can try and address those. But typically with a park, nice, fresh, brand new looking, that's where we can kind of set the tone for how we want people to act and behave in the space. With that, I see we're actually over time, but so it sounds like for the most part, you know, we have some tweaking that we're going to be doing. Kayla and Jocelyn are going to work to advance this and get it at a place where as soon as funding does become available, we will look to try and get this constructed. Obviously, we're going to take that feedback in and make those adjustments. If you did not speak tonight, you have any other thoughts, comments that you want to get in, Kayla's going to quickly scroll to the kind of closing page that has my contact information. Thanks, Kayla. So you can go to the project page for Paula Titus, see additional information. Feel free to share with neighbors as well. My email is there. So if, again, you didn't speak and you want to send information, you can do that there. And again, if there's any other maintenance requests, issues, or anything, 311 is an appropriate app for that. So with that, I will hope you all have a good rest of our spring, and look forward to seeing you guys when we start construction.
Hey, Nate, I want to just say thank you to everyone who came on the call tonight. I thought that the discussion was outstanding. Some great points were made, and it's good to see that people have a passion for getting this pod created and used appropriately. So thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.
Right. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Great comments and questions.